Okay. I gotta be louder. Alright, so before we jump into it, we all have masks on, so like it's gonna be hard to know when people are starting and stopping to talk. So like just be mindful of that. When you hear somebody talking, just, you know, stop, and then I'll like eventually get to you. You don't have to raise your hand. Like if you feel something, just say it, but like just be mindful of everybody else in the room. And we can just get into it. So you can just say your names. Starting with you.
Hi, I'm Karl Marx.
Okay, so
Oh, I'm Karl Marx. There you go.
I'm Yannick. What's going on? I'm Josh.
I'm Maddie.
I'm Jordan.
I'm Thomas. Hey, I'm Justin.
Abdul.
I'm Phil.
I'm Owena.
I'm Asante. Emmanuel.
Kenny.
And Letitia is coming. So, Diaspora War. What is it? Anybody know what it is? Can anybody give me like a quick definition? Diaspora War.
Black Americans, basically.
That's how you would define it. Anybody else have anything? Y'all think there is one? Like, do you think there's any kind of conflict between us, like, as a community?
Yes.
I don't think there's one that's been portrayed to me, but there is one.
So how do you think they portray it?
I mean, they portray it to be like we go against each other each and every day, which does not happen. I don't think so. I think we can coexist within the same sections.
You gotta speak up.
I said they portrayed it as if like we go against each other each and every day, but that is not the case. I think we just have we each have our separate issues that we worried about, but we also have a common goal to get together. That's how I believe.
I think it's just like a misunderstanding and a conflict of different perspectives as a result of our history, of course, with slavery. That's kind of like really like the foundation of all this, to be honest. As a result of that, we kind of get kind of like this misunderstandings and just not proper communication between the groups.
I feel like there is a misinformation and lack of exposure to both cultures. That's why there is like a lot of tension between like African Americans, Africans, and Caribbeans. We're not aware of each other's culture, and that kind of creates tension.
Is that what it is though? Because I feel like at a school like Southern, we're in close enough proximity that not knowing each other is not, that's not the issue.
We're
I feel like to a certain extent we stay within our kind of like cultures. Like Africans like hang out with other Africans, Caribbeans hang out with other Caribbeans, and African Americans hang out with other African Americans. I feel like, especially if you grow up, like for me, for instance, I grew up in the African community, so like I've just kind of always been exposed to Africans, and I just tend to like make friends with other Africans as well.
I also feel like there is a lack of acceptance to each other. Like for each other, we do not accept each other as anything. Because I would rather be with Africans because that's the kind of people I'm used to being around, and I've experienced so much from African Americans. They kind of like trip me from being like socialized with them, I guess.
I don't think the division is that deep to a point where it causes violence, but you could definitely see social divides within it, and that kind of low-key comes from, I would say, gatekeeping of your culture and wanting to kind of, you know, well, yeah, keep it to yourself. So Black Americans themselves having their own culture, because Black Americans do have their own culture. Sometimes I hate saying Africans because Africa is a very large continent and has cultures within itself. And even with Caribbean Americans, yeah, I could group all of the Caribbean together, but we each have our own stuff. Like Jamaicans and Haitians are not the same. Like it's not that we don't even speak the same dialect. Yeah, so I think the divide, sometimes I would blame social media because of this. The divide is kind of overblown within a sense, because it doesn't cause, from my experience, too much time.
Right. I think for the most part it's like an identity issue. So for you guys, when somebody asks you what are you, like if it's a white person you would say Black, but if it's for a Black person, what would you answer? Like, are you Nigerian? Are you Ghanaian? Are you Haitian? Are you American? Like, what is your ethnic upbringing?
even, of course, you look at me, I appear black. You don't hear any sort of accent in my voice. So
before you would answer, I'm black, you would say I'm Haitian.
I said I was born in Haiti. You know, I wasn't raised there. I'll tell them that straight up. But I say I was born in Haiti because, I mean, me being someone who was just born there but not raised there, I wanted to be as close to my, you know, culture as possible. So it's like, oh, you want to see the birthmark on me? Like, the vaccine joint, like the little shot? Yeah, it's like, I'm an immigrant. So, I mean, that's what I do.
What about you?
I'm American, usually. Because when I went to St. Lucia, they called me American boy the whole time. So that's when I realized that's what I am. So.
What about you?
Immediately, I would say Ghanaian American. That was just immediately what you grew up around. That's what you grew up. If you're born there, you say that's what you say. If you're not, I know a lot of people would rather still identify as Ghanaian American, even if they weren't born there, because they don't want to kind of attach themselves to African American.
So do you think like identifying as a certain thing in our community affects how people treat you? Or like even in society, like
Definitely.
does saying I'm Ghanaian carry a different connotation than saying I'm just black?
I think sometimes when you identify with a certain, like part of you, people tend to go to whatever stereotypes they have. So sometimes, obviously, it's different for everybody, but I think a lot of the times, a lot of people go with the general idea of who they have or who they see a Ghanaian person to be rather than like getting to know like a certain person or something like that. It's like in a general sense.
Alright, this
I think personally for me, ever since coming to college, I've identified more as being African instead of just like American, because usually in like middle school or high school, the stereotypes are like, oh, Africans are this and that and stuff like that. But I think what made me appreciate my culture more is the community I have around me.
I mean, I would say, thinking back, I think that's what would cause the divide would be starting from the younger age. Growing up, I could speak for a good amount of Africans, it's not as cool as it is now to be African, openly African, because even if you didn't say it, they could tell. You know what I'm saying? So they can tell that you're African and then they don't speak to you the same, they don't treat you the same. But then when you come to college, all of a sudden you have a safety net of those type of people who are similar to yourself. And then it's like, okay, I can be who I am without feeling a certain way, unapologetically myself. And people are going to be supportive of it. Right?
so do you guys think that the shift sorry.
Sorry, I just want to add something. He said I think he kind of piggyback on it because I think he mentioned like everybody want to gatekeep their culture. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, yes, do we do some kind of like the Africans or the Haitians that make it gatekeep their culture to a certain extent? Yes, but I don't think they gatekeep it to like. I don't think a Haitian gatekeep their culture to a Jamaican. You can say that in a sense, but the Africans, I'm talking about the Africans, that the immigrant African, the Haitian immigrant, the Jamaican immigrant, to a certain extent, they can gatekeep their culture to the Black American for one reason. The reason is usually the Black American that's born here doesn't try to get into the culture or try to learn the culture till it gets popular, like the African culture, for example. Like I think it was like back in 2016, 2015 when the Vito and Burna Boy started coming. That's when everybody wanna now I wanna wear the shiki. Now I wanna wear this. Now I wanna wear that. I think that's one of the reasons. Like a certain African would like to gatekeep their culture, unless you, as a Black American, you really wanna learn about the culture and not just for show, like because it's popular now, or you just wanna get into it. What if 2 years later? Somebody at the top of, like we like to say, the white men decide, okay, we're going to just pump something to social media, and all of a sudden the African culture is not popular anymore. What are you going to do? Now you're going back to regular rappers, regular this, you're going to still say the same African Buddhist culture, Haitian, this, Jamaican, that. That's why I think to a certain extent, the Black immigrants have their own right to gatekeep their culture, unless they can see that the Black American is really trying to learn it and not going with the popular vibes.
Well, I think just to respond to that a little bit, I mean, I don't disagree with you actually, but there is a difference between an immigrant experience and a Black American experience. Black American experience is obviously I'm forced to be here and I've made it what I can be and I've made my own culture. But part of Black culture has come from also Caribbean culture, African culture, and like when we talk about hip hop was created by a Jamaican. Like it's heavily influenced by Caribbean culture, by African culture. So in kind of a sense, although you can gatekeep your culture, Black people also combine our cultures into one and make something better from it. So I do think you should keep certain things for your own and make people recognize and acknowledge hey, this came from here. But also it's not bad. Well, we've seen that, Black people as a whole in the diaspora have just made something, together for ourselves. I'll bring something here, I'll bring something out here, I'll bring some here. Everything sometimes makes into, one new thing. I don't know if that makes sense. And it's for Black Americans, what was the point? For Black Americans wanting to, I guess for Black Americans trying to get back to their roots. I know we're going to talk about privilege later, but it really is a privilege to know where you are from. I know my root, even though I don't really claim Ghana because I'm Maroon, I know the Maroons were in Ghana. I know they were taken to Jamaica. They fought back. So I know I can trace my roots back there. A lot of people can't. A lot of those projects we had to do to go back to our roots. A lot of people can't. So I think that's why Black Americans try to find where they're from, and that can't overstep boundaries. So I understand.
No, I'm not to be I want to make it clear. I don't think gatekeeping is right, period. But if you really think of it,
Wait. Before we get into the conversation about the gate, that's definitely the story. I just want to let Manny go now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I definitely wanted to go off what Jordan was saying because someone who identifies as Black American, when people ask me, what are you? I just say I'm Black because, I don't know. I know nothing. I can say my family's from the South. I say my dad's from Louisiana. He's from New Orleans. I can, try to claim, Cajun or Creole and stuff like that, but I really, don't know. And so when he's talking about piecing the pieces, together from, my interactions with everyone else who's different, it's yeah, it kind of is like that. Trying to figure out what my identity is and who I am and learning stuff, I guess. Because there's certain things we all share, like hair, or braiding and stuff like that. I get that from many different people, not just one person of one culture and stuff like that.
And Jordan mentioned something about there being a distinct immigrant experience or Black immigrant experience versus the African American experience. So do you think that society kind of rewards Black immigrants in a way that they don't African Americans?
That's an interesting word. Reward? I wouldn't call it a reward.
Well, if you disagree, tell me.
I mean, I don't think it's a reward to be claimed as an alien. When you come here and you're an immigrant, they don't treat you or speak to you as if you were part of the country.
But I think at the same time, when you actually read into it and you look into representation, for instance, Ivy League schools, African immigrants are not even 10% of the Black population in America, but they make up 40% of the Ivy League population. It's the same in legal institutions and finance institutions. So is privilege a thing? What does that look like?
I would have to agree with you on that because I've seen people's reactions, especially by white people. I'm talking to them and I'm talking to them about where I'm from. As soon as I say I'm Ghanaian, their whole attitude shifts. They see me in a different light. They don't associate me with the portrayal of how Black Americans are depicted on on the media. I guess it kind of shifts their logic of who they think I am.
So to add to the school thing that you mentioned, you said the Black immigrant is not 10% of the Black population in the U.S. and yet you said they make up the majority of the Ivy League school. There's a reason for that. One, there's already from the beginning, the Black immigrant already had their own. I mean, not the Black immigrant. The Black American already had their own disadvantages, right? Plus, you have as they're growing up, they don't have that type of figure to teach them their education throughout as they grow up, they don't have that type of education. I'm not saying they don't have the education, just to be clear. What I'm saying is the Ivy League, they would, I think, they admit more of the African immigrants into the school because they see that if you go to an African country and you go to or you go to Haiti, for example, I myself can testify that math, sciences, and stuff, the immigrants knows that more elaborately and more better than the regular black immigrant that's here. So in a way, when they admitting students into school, they take all that into consideration. Now, when the black immigrant is applying to the school, does he say he's from Ghana? No. Does he say he's from this school? No. What he said.
You probably see the name.
No. What he said. No. But let's go back to what she said. What it said is that you either black or something else. So what goes on the paper? Every single one of us, when we're applying to something, we have to put black in the beginning. We have to put black. So when it goes there, it's not like they're okay. It's automatically okay. That's gotta be some type of African immigrant. So I think if anything, the black immigrant have a disadvantage when they're going into school. But let me say why though. You can disagree. That's fine. I said you can disagree. Respectfully. No, I'm gonna say that they get admitted when the black immigrant come in. First of all, most of them they have to go to let's say if they go through the process in their country. I don't know if anybody just came from their country and come straight to school here. They have to go to one of the things they're gonna ask them for. How can you provide for yourself when you get here, right?
By the way, we're not just talking about first generation. This is first and second generation. So the immigrants and also their children that were born here.
No, but aren't you talking about the black immigrants first, the African immigrants?
Yeah. So first and second generation.
Oh.
That means that if I'm Nigerian American, but I would be considered first generation American because my parents are not from here, but I was born here. And according to statistics, I would have a higher chance of getting admitted to Harvard than somebody that's African American. I just want to know why that is. Does that point to privilege? Does it not?
I don't think it really points to privilege, because I think whether you're looking at it from a black immigrant or African American, there's a little give or take here and there. Where in some areas where as a black American, you've been pretty much like you're just catching up in terms of historically being able to have access to certain things. Whereas that's probably not exactly the same case if you're like an immigrant coming from Africa and your kids are coming here. There's a different kind of set of culture that we've been indoctrinated in, which is kind of different than if you are a black American and your whole entire lineage has been through slavery, not being able to read, segregation and Jim Crow, and de facto and de jure segregation, where you have that against you. But I think on the same side, you could easily find the same comparisons and parallels within African immigrants.
I agree. I think that speaking from a Caribbean sense, I feel like immigrants that come to this country have a very sense of urgency to work hard, and I feel like that's kind of I feel like that's kind of indoctrinated into when they want to come over here. It's America is seen as this, for anyone who doesn't live here, it's seen as this place of a land of opportunity. That's the slogan that they use. So people that come over here, they're like, oh yeah, if I work hard, I can get this, I can get this, I can get this. People that already lived here, the black people that already lived here, I feel like he said, we're playing catch up. The education systems and, black communities are broken. So there's not really a sense of wanting, not saying that all black people are like this, but it's just kind of the cultural sense of wanting to do better. And I feel like immigrants, especially, they like you said, for the immigrants that come over here and have children that are grow up in America, but they're not from where their parents are from, it's still they have that, their parents telling them, you gotta go to school, you gotta, it's kind of a constant push. You gotta do good, you gotta do good. So I feel like that may be a tribute to the reason, it may not be the only reason, but a tribute to the reason why, you'll see more African, or just, maybe not African, but any immigrant people come from these countries that do well or get to these Ivy League schools. Cause here in the regular African American black community, I don't think that's really pushed that well. Education is not pushed to be great,
I would.
So like,
I actually want to say that I think that when we talk about immigration, I think it's interesting how we're highlighting specific people that are actually erased from the immigration debate. Usually when we talk about immigration, it's not about Africans, not about Caribbeans at all. And even though these people are oppressed, I'm not disregarding that, but it's usually centered around Latin Americans. And I think there's a purpose of that. And the reason why we erase black people is because it's part of, American and white cultures overall is to erase black people. I would also put the fact that we're missing the intersectionality of class in this. Usually the people who get into, Ivy Leagues have money. You're not seeing any poor African, poor, Jamaican get into Yale or Harvard. These people have money. When we talk about Ivy Leagues, nothing's really great about them. They just have a lot of money. So there are Africans with a lot of money in certain countries. So I think that's where kind of a weird intersectionality happens between race and just class itself. So I just want to highlight those.
Do you think it's the wealth?
Yeah.
So
And if it's the culture?
I think it's privilege.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
That's a fact.
Just to jump up on Jordan, I think that we're forgetting that Africans and West Indians, you guys have your own oppression, and African Americans, we have American oppression. So when immigrants come over, black immigrants come over, you're not really necessarily facing with black American oppression because you weren't born here. So although you face it to a certain extent, you know what I'm saying? Because you have your own safe haven, you have your own communities. Well, for the black community, it's still kind of like disorganized because we're still facing our own oppression. Just like if you guys go back to Africa, your own country, or if you go back to your own country in the Caribbean, you're going to face your own oppression. But I simply say that because I also feel like we're forgetting in every social group, there's a group that has privilege and there's a group that's discriminated against by other social groups. If we look at, for example, like sexuality, bisexuals and asexuals are discriminated against by gay people and transsexuals. If we look at the religious realm, Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons face a lot of backlash from other Christians or people who are Islamic. If we look at the black community, I definitely feel like Africans do have a little bit more privilege, and African Americans are a little bit less discriminated against, not by other black people, but it simply goes back to more like white people. Because I feel like when you're in America, you're how can I say this? You're competing with mostly white people. If that makes sense, right? So, for example, just like you said with Ivy League schools, if we take it to doctors, there's little amount of black doctors, right? But most of those doctors are from African descent. If we look at lawyers, same thing. If you look at, I forgot the thing too. And it's simply going back to, someone said name. Although we do put black first or African American first on the application, they're gonna be like, oh wait, we gotta fill in a quota. And we gotta give out scholarships so we don't get, in trouble, whatever the case may be, by the certain college organization. So when you go through that list of black candidates, you're gonna be like, white people are going to be like, which one is more exotic? Which one is going to bring us the most attention or has the most, stand out? They're not going to go for like Samantha Jones. We already have a Samantha Jones. We're going to go for someone whose name that they can barely pronounce just because. And I think it goes back to features too. And I say that because, for example, black models. If you look at Victoria's Secret or any other high famous runway models, a lot of them are African descent, or some of them are from the United Kingdom, but they have very high African features. And African Americans, we have those features too, but our gene pool is a lot more mixed because due to history. But if you're from Africa, or of course, the United Kingdom, you're going to have that mixed gene pool too. But when you're from Africa, you're going to have that behind cheekbones, that really, really full lips, those really nice curves, all that natural stuff. And I think white people really cater to that more because it's again, that need to ooh. It's the same features too that they're also displayed in human zoos. I think that's what we're getting at.
I feel like I disagree with some of the points because I don't know. Sometimes when I think about it, not at the end of the day you're black, but a white person is literally just going to see you as a black person. They are not thinking this deep about this type of stuff. When we talk of just if I'm white and I'm just seeing everybody, I'm seeing everybody as black. They don't see our culture, they don't see our ethnicities. They don't want to look that deep. When it comes to jobs, the reason I would disagree a little bit is because, well, I know we're gonna get to this, but colorism kind of plays a role in it too, and your hair texture comes into a lot of it as well. So there are multiple forms I think you have to look at, and also if you're an immigrant, sometimes you can just step away and just be like, you know what, I'm not gonna bother with this, even though it can affect me and it can be violent and kill me, because there are plenty of immigrants who have been killed by police violence, just like Black Americans. You could simply say, well, not my family, but I know some families that just be like, well, racism, you're gonna have to deal with it, you just fight along. And there are other families, depending on how you're raised, that are gonna be like, okay, let's fight the system, let's do X, Y, and Z. We're going to face this issue, we're not going to, push it to the side. So I think it's...
In what ways do you think you grew up different? Like, just off the bat, there's African Americans here, there's Africans, there's West Indians. What are some cultural things that you think are specific to you, like regarding how you grew up? So we can kind of address values and how that might...
My family's very blended by like range of skin tone. I can say comfortably, like colorism was never an issue in my family. But I definitely, from hearing stories of how my mom grew up though, and her siblings, I could say it's, but for me personally, I could say like, it wasn't for me.
What are like some cultural things that are specific to you?
I feel like Africans value education. Like education is like most must. We have to be educated, and we're taught to be aggressive, and like if we want to enter a certain space,